Happy Sunday, everyone, and welcome back to the Scaries podcast. I'm your host, Matt Rossi, and we are back on another Sunday to hear your scary stories and do our best to help you through them. Today, I am joined by a very special guest, Miss Nina Purewal. She is a best-selling author of the book, Let That Shit Go. And in addition to being a published author, she is also a corporate marketer turned mindfulness guru who works with corporations and their employees to implement mindfulness practices into their daily lives. In fact, that is actually how Nina and I met over 4 years ago when I was working in the corporate world. Nina would come in pretty like quarterly to how often would you come in?
As much as you signed up for a
Yeah,
session.
me
so
every
probably,
month.
Yeah, a couple times a year, maybe.
But yeah, Nina and I have worked together now for over 4 years. She has seen me at my best and my worst and has navigated a lot of different life stages with me, from breakups to TV appearances to leaving my corporate job and really everything in between. So I am super excited to have you here. You are probably, not to offend my other guests, the guests that I've been so excited to have on here, just because you really have been with me through it all. And now, as I help everyone else kind of navigate what they're going through in life, being able to kind of share some of the stories that we've experienced together and letting you kind of share some of your stories and background too, I think will make for a really fun episode. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be here. And this is extra special for me because I have seen you on your journey for the last 4 years. So I'm so happy you are making an impact and doing you. And I'm loving watching your journey. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Then you're also our first international guest.
Ooh.
So Nina flew in from Toronto this morning to be here. So I'm super grateful for you making the trip all the way to Boston to be here. So with that, I think we can get into it. I do just want to quickly go through the ground rules before we get into it. First being that all submissions are anonymous and are to stay anonymous. This is an inclusive space. We listen and we don't judge. No hate comments are to be tolerated, and we are not licensed therapists, nor Nina or I. This is purely for entertainment and educational purposes and should not be used in lieu of any medical advice. And then also just like a slight trigger warning, we may get into some topics around trauma and kind of deeper issues that we maybe not have discussed in the past. So just wanted to give a quick heads up, but all good stuff on the way. And really excited today to learn and teach you all how to let that shit go.
Sweet. I just put my gum under the table here because I realized I was chewing it, so
It's
remind
okay.
me to get it back.
That's fine. It's from TJ Maxx. It's not that nice of a table. Actually, this is from Hobby Lobby, so you can just keep it under there.
Sweet.
So I know I gave like a quick, brief background on you, but I did want to let you kind of give your story. So like how you ended up where you are today, you know, career to side quests, you could call it, and kind of everything in between, and what has kind of like inspired your mission and your purpose to kind of fuel your journey and kind of where you are today.
All right. Well, my story doesn't start out as the greatest story. So when I was 16, I unexpectedly lost my dad and my brother, as you know. And I'll say this pretty vulnerably on this podcast. I don't usually talk about how, but I lost them to a murder-suicide. And that day, I was supposed to be gone too. And so I've kind of lived every single day after that, just being grateful to be alive and lucky to be here. That said, I struggled with survivor's guilt. I struggled with PTSD. I pretty much repressed and suppressed everything for a good decade. And I did the thing. I went to university. I got my business degree. I had a great career in sales and marketing, going up the ladder. And then in 2010, I was reporting into the U.S. I was in Toronto reporting into the U.S. and I was addicted to work. I was addicted to my crackberry. I'm dating myself here, but
Yeah.
I was working kind of all hours of the night, and I thought something needs to change. And so I did something drastic and sold the house and put family planning on hold and quit my career outright, right when I was kind of at the peak of growing.
How old were you when you did this?
I was 29.
Okay.
How
We never thought
ironic.
about that.
My
Yeah.
goodness. Yeah,
I'm
I was
29
I
and
was
yeah.
right there with you. And I decided to live in California for a year in the Redwoods in a monastery,
Okay.
in an ashram, and do a 1-year course on very high level spirituality taught by monks
And
all
tell
over
me
the
more
world.
about that. So, like, you're totally disconnected from the world. You
Yes.
have no phone, no internet,
Yes.
basically no news
Nothing.
cycle, right? Like,
Had
nothing.
no idea what was going on in the real
Yeah.
world, and that was intentional.
Yeah.
I wanted to unplug. I mean, some people, they had a little internet center and some people would go check, but I chose to unplug. And I told my friends and family, if you want to get a hold of me, you can write me a letter. And I actually sent and received 150
Wow.
handwritten letters that year.
Wow.
Have
That's
a box
cool.
of them. It was incredible. But what was crazy was here I am thinking I've got life in control and I've got my career and everything's going well. And little did I know, in the quiet, because there was no distractions, there was no phone, there was no internet, there was no friends, there was no, anything, gym, all of this shit started coming up because it was me in the Redwoods
Yeah.
and all this truth and wisdom. And all the trauma came up and all the hurt came up and all the anger and the resentment. And suddenly it was like, wow, you need to deal. And I feel like that happened to a lot of people in the pandemic, because
Yeah.
we were forced to kind of isolate, and suddenly it was like, do I like my life? Do I
Yeah.
like the people
All
I'm
of like the
with?
coping mechanisms too that you use. Like, it's really easy to, like you said, suppress and repress when you can keep busy, when you have meetings 9 to 5 every day, and then commitments after work, and it really, like, you can never sit with yourself. And I think that's why a lot of people struggle when they're alone, is because those kind of things start to bubble up, and you do, like you said in the beginning, like, have to sit with that discomfort.
100%. We're on autopilot. It's just our nature. And now there's a plethora of things to distract us
Yeah.
with our phones and whatnot. So the minute we're alone, that's when we have to question, are we really happy?
Yeah.
And that's when we get uncomfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. So then now you're in the ashram, you're going through, so you were in it for a full
1 year.
year?
Yeah.
And so then how was kind of reintegration into society after that?
It was wild. It was hard, to be honest. I went on this amazing journey, and everybody at the time thought I was crazy because it was an economic
Yeah.
crisis and nobody was talking about mindfulness and
Yeah.
meditation. Like, maybe yoga was a thing. But sometimes when you do the thing, and I have to say, it was an inner knowing that I followed, because
Yeah.
so many people, even our financial advisors, like, what are you doing? People at work, why are you leaving? Where are you going? But it was a knowing I had that this is something I have to do. And it was a year. I mean, everybody else had another year of corporate behind
Yeah.
them, right? Like, it definitely was a risk, but coming back was uncomfortable. You know, I came back and the housing market went up. I didn't know what I was going to do for work. I knew I wanted to spread this ancient wisdom,
Yeah.
but the world wasn't ready. Like I said, no companies were talking about wellness or mindfulness. And so it took a while to integrate. I think I worked in marketing for CPG. So I worked on Trident and
Yeah.
chocolate and Dairy Milk, a bunch of brands. And I remember going into the grocery store the first time after a year of not being in a grocery store and staring at the gum aisle and thinking about how much, like, heart attack stress went into, like,
The pack
is
of gum.
this strawberry? Yeah. Is
It's
the
so
strawberry
true.
looking delicious? How is the kiwi beside the strawberry? Should we cut in, and not to mention the money, invested by companies in this, but I thought, wow, so much of my life was focused on this, and this doesn't have to be the future. It can be if you love marketing and you love what you
Yeah.
do, great, but there's just so many other opportunities. So when we kind of get into a career path, we feel a little pigeonholed
Yeah.
into that space. And it's just a reminder that, take a big step out. And we feel this when we go on vacation, when we get
Yeah.
a break, when we're talking to someone who's doing something different. So lean into that, because it doesn't have to be the path.
Yeah. I think there's that feeling of like what you should do, and then that internal strife sometimes when you're kind of going against that.
Yeah.
I mean, I even now working for myself, still go into 7-Elevens or grocery stores and I walk the store. And I haven't worked in CPG now for 6 months, but I spent 7 years doing it. And I'm like seeing things that I worked on and launched and like worked on like 9 months ago and they're now just getting into market.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's nice, but I'm like, wow, I'm so happy I'm not doing that anymore because like as cool as it was, like at the end of the day, like I was selling beer. Like it was something that people kind of would get on their own. I think what I struggled with towards the end was feeling like the work that I did had an actual purpose. And meanwhile, I was also like kind of stopping to drink, not stopping drinking, but like being more, for a while, I felt like alcohol really controlled my life, like being in my 20s and
Yeah.
it being work and my social life. But I was trying to be healthier and reduce alcohol, but like kind of feeling the struggle there. So
Yeah.
not just like leaving the corporate world, but also feeling like there was no purpose in the work that I was doing and the person I was becoming actively worked against like that purpose that I was working at. So
Yeah, absolutely. And that does happen. And that's why, when I work with corporations, I encourage people to either find purpose within their work. Like I was also a big advocate of corporate social responsibility.
yeah,
So they put me on like the launch of the Fair Trade Chocolate Project and a lot of things, I got to go to Africa. So try to, find that passion within work. And if it's not there, that's okay too. Sometimes it's a means to an end and you find your passion,
yeah,
outside of work doing the things that you love. But
yeah,
it is a nice, heart soul alignment
yeah.
when you do the thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So now you've come back from the ashram. You didn't go back into, or did you go back into corporate for a little while?
I did. So
Okay.
I didn't quite know where to land. I just knew I wanted to do something more purposeful
Okay, cool.
than what I was doing after I'd worked on that fair trade project. I thought, brand is great. I loved marketing. It was cool, but I wanted to do something that had more meaning for me. So I worked in startup for about 3 years. I worked as a marketing director for a company called TerraCycle, and then they promoted me to the GM of Canada
Okay.
after about 6 months. So that was an incredible experience. Working startup really taught me how to do things grassroots, like as an
Yeah.
entrepreneur as well. And it was a good kind of segue into entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
But I did work for a while after I came back. And it's just to say, like, sometimes when you do the thing, there are moments of discomfort or it doesn't always click right away. I always tell people I knew I wanted to do this in 2011.
Yeah.
I didn't start doing it until 2017
Yeah.
and I've been at it for 8 years.
I mean, how long was I telling you that I wanted to do entrepreneurship and I didn't know what I wanted to do? Like I for 4 years I was like, I want to be an entrepreneur. And you're like, okay, so what are you gonna do? And I was like, well, I could get my real estate license.
Real
I could go
estate.
into real estate. I could, I don't know, start consulting.
Consulting.
It
What did we
was,
talk about? We had a list.
yeah, we had a whole list. And you always joke, you're like, the social media kind of came out of left field.
Well, I've been reflecting on your story a lot and actually sharing it with people because what I find so fascinating is when we first started working together with coaching, we had this list. And this right here, your influencer status, your podcast, everything that you're doing right now wasn't even in the subset of decisions. It wasn't even a thing
No.
really at the time. And so it's just a nod that you don't even know what you don't even know yet
Yeah.
about what you're going to accomplish and what you're going to achieve
Yeah.
and what's out there for you.
And I try and remember that now because I feel like even having all, like, I'm at a point where, 4 years ago, I only dreamed of being. And right now, I'm a little bit preoccupied on the next and the, like, how do you continue to grow or scale things or do the next big thing? But I'm like, what is that? And I try and look back to be like, okay, well, I didn't even know about like the social media thing being on the radar, and here I am 4 years later. So trying to be patient and just like showing up every single day and kind of doing my best to relinquish control, which is so
Yes.
much easier said than done, especially for me, which like I am like a control freak.
Yeah, most of us in corporate
Yeah,
are
yeah.
A-type control freaks.
So I think like I'm taking a similar path to, I guess, when I was in corporate building out the social media, where it was like you do a little bit on the side. You kind of just take it day by day, do the little things each day, and over time they change. So is that how did you go from now like the startup to building out what you have now with coaching and workshops and writing a book. Did you start writing the book while you were still working, or did you take time to do that?
Oh, I haven't told you this story about the
I don't,
book.
I don't think so.
The book, I never wanted to be an author. For crying out loud, I failed English in high school. So it's hilarious that it's like international best-selling author. The book landed in my lap.
Wow.
Kate and I, my co-author, we were doing workshops around the city in Toronto at this hotel called the Drake Hotel. And Kate had this great idea of putting swear words beside them because that was the thing at the
Yeah.
time, right? Like in 2018,
It's like the subtle art of
2017.
not giving a
The
fuck. It was like
Yeah,
jarring.
exactly. So we had like mindful AF, and then we had learn how to fucking meditate, which also felt very weird for me coming from an ashram, learning
Yeah.
from monks, and then being like adding swearing. That was a whole journey in itself.
Yeah.
But HarperCollins caught wind of them because they went viral. They just kept selling out.
Yeah.
And HarperCollins said, look, we have The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson. We want a mindfulness version of that. We love how you're talking about mindfulness. Would you be open to writing a book? And we said, absolutely. Wrote a 25-page proposal in like a week and presented it to them. Now, the thing is, they wanted to call the book Fuck Meditation.
Okay.
And I wasn't cool with that because
Yeah.
from a marketer's perspective,
Yeah.
you're talking to people who want to meditate.
Yeah,
'cause
it
that
was a little
doesn't work,
confusing.
Or don't want to meditate from a target perspective, but also like meditation's a very sacred practice, right?
Yeah.
So
It was real
we did the
sacrilegious.
a little bit, yeah. And Kate was great in the meeting because it was all white people in the meeting,
Yeah.
right? So she was like, that could be a very sensitive term, and she's like, it's like saying
Fuck
fuck the
praying.
cross
Or yeah.
fuck communion.
Yeah.
And they kind of looked back and said, we love your proposal, but the executive team has signed off on this title and that's what it is. And we walked away. We said, great, then we're not your authors.
Yeah.
Because we talk
Good for
about
you.
authenticity in the book, which was a hard thing, right?
Yeah.
Because we thought, oh my God, we got this book deal. And then a week later, so the book is filled with 120 tips on how to let shit go and find more peace and happiness in the everyday. And one of the tips was let that shit go.
Yeah.
So they called us a week later and they're like, would you be open to let that shit go? And we said, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the rest is history. I mean, I'm completely flabbergasted that it's been all these years and it's still continuing
Yeah.
to grow. And so also thank you for everybody who's picking up and reading
Yeah,
it and
it's
supporting
definitely
us.
go
I
and
so
grab it.
appreciate
I will tell you. So I would have the book here. It is still in my luggage because I forgot to grab it from Hawaii because I was bringing it to Hawaii and I was reading it
Oh,
there.
it's in
Because
Hawaii.
I go back to this book. It's like
Aw.
my Bible. So like
my
whenever I'm
gosh.
kind of find myself in old thought patterns, I always pick up the book. I think one of my favorite things about it is just how digestible in real like the tone is. Like it
Thanks.
feels like you're talking with a friend. Also, like I now know you, so it like I kind of like read
can
it
hear
in your
me?
voice. Yeah. But also it just like feels so approachable, and you take very modern day concepts with the corporate world, but then also like you said, like the ancient mindfulness practices, and really combine them in an easy to really understand and apply way. So
Thanks.
I really
Appreciate
it's one of my favorite books. I definitely think all of you should read it. And I mean, yeah, it's already a best-selling book, so don't just take our word for it.
It's absolutely crazy. I so appreciate that. And it just means so much to me when I hear that the book has had impact. So thank you.
Yeah. So then now you've released the book, and now you go around to corporations and you've like really built beyond the book, like expanding not just with what, like you could have basically wiped your hands clean and been like, great, we have a book, but now you've actually expanded it and have created a business off of it and
Yeah.
helping corporations really implement these practices and their
Yeah.
employees. And you do one-on-one coaching, and that's what we spent, 4 years doing.
Yeah, I really came back wanting to make all of the wisdom practical. And having worked in corporate for like a decade at the time, I thought this is so applicable to corporate stress and anxiety. We can just explain it in a different way. And so after, the book, I mean, parallel pathing with the book was me reaching out to corporations, but this was 2017 and I kind of had to push
Yeah.
mindfulness and wellness. Like,
Yeah.
you need this. And they were like, eh. And post pandemic, I've worked with 60 companies,
Yeah.
probably almost 70 now, in the last 8 years. And it's been just a phenomenal fucking ride. Everything, I'm so grateful for it all. I didn't expect any of this to transpire the way it did. And what I would recommend to people is get to know your why. What's your purpose? Why do you want to do this? And I just always go back to that. And, in my meditation, I kind of call that out and say, this is a little like woo woo or out there,
Yeah,
but,
go for it.
to the universe, like, you show me.
Yeah.
You show me. I'm here as a vessel to do this. And my why I've known since I was 16 is, I want to help people find hope through adversity.
Yeah.
You can go through the most traumatic thing and still live an amazing, incredible life. You have to do the work.
Yeah.
But get to know your why. And then instead of being like, I want to do a podcast, or I want to do coaching, or I want to do corporate workshops, allow that to come kind of naturally. Of course, you have to plan. You have to
Yeah.
hustle. I was talking to another entrepreneur, and she was like, how do you just know things are going to be okay? I'm like, well, I don't always, but I hustle, and then I just trust.
Yeah.
And she actually sent me a T-shirt. I should have worn
Hustle,
it. It said,
hustle and trust. I love that.
Because that's really how it is. Because I don't know where my income's going to come from next year.
Yeah.
I really don't know what clients are going to invest in me. And so every year I kind of have an empty P&L, and I'm like, okay, let's go. I have a target.
Yeah.
And trust me, I hustle. I'm constantly posting on LinkedIn or reaching out to clients or chatting with people, networking. This January, I was blessed enough to launch an incredible team of people.
Congrats.
Thank you. And I can't say too much, but there might be another book in the horizon.
Okay.
With our U.S.
I'll
publisher,
save
which
it.
is pretty cool. So, just hustle and trust. And when those things happen, you just have to just be so grateful. Of course, there's a practical side of the money making, and happy to talk about that. But there is a lot of just letting go, which
Yeah.
coming from a control corporate environment
It's hard.
is a change.
And I think that's what that discomfort is what you have to also become comfortable with. And I think it's easy. Like I remember when I was leaving corporate, it was the things like health insurance and investment accounts and all of that those were so certain. But now, having gone full into like entrepreneurship, like I've blown those like out of the wall. Like I can afford to pay my insurance. Like, but those
Right.
things, it's just that certainty you value so much more than the potential future earnings that
100%.
you can get.
Yeah.
So I think that's what keeps a lot of people too risk averse and
Right.
kind of stuck.
I mean, there's something to getting a paycheck every
Yeah,
2 weeks versus
100%.
not knowing, right? But that's why you can start the side hustle on the
Yeah.
side.
It's like as much as you can reduce kind of that risk is kind of the approach I took. Like I always look back and I probably could have done this sooner, but to me, just having the certainty that I had this cushion and
Totally.
stability like helped, and it made that leap a
Yeah.
little bit more of like
Don't
aha.
coulda, shoulda, woulda over there. Okay.
Yeah,
You did it
yeah.
at
Hey, you know what?
exactly the right
Yes,
time.
exactly.
Look, I'm still coaching you.
So yeah, so cool. So with that, what I tried to do a little bit differently for this episode was I tried to pull scaries that actually align with different themes and chapters of the book, so that
Awesome.
we can kind of guide the conversation around really like your expertise. And I think a lot of our scaries fall under a lot of the kind of practices that you describe in your book. And so I have some notes here that we'll kind of read through, but with that we can get into the submissions.
Sounds good. Let's go.
All right. So the first one is, I'm in my late 20s and I constantly feel like I'm not good enough at work, in dating, and I frequently compare myself to others my age who seem to have it all figured out.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure everyone's heard of the quote, comparison is the thief of joy.
Yes.
Right? So when we compare, we tend to look at everybody's best parts of their lives, right? Like someone's in an amazing relationship, and then this person has their career together, and this person's traveling the world, but it's like
the
social
highlight
media,
reel, yeah.
the highlight reel, right? So it's so important to go back to, what do you want and what are your objectives, and don't even pay attention, because there's always going to be someone that's kicking ass and doing better than you, right?
Yeah.
Like we
And
talked
someone doing better than them too.
exactly, right? Like I'm always, we talked about Chatty, and I'm like,
Yeah.
man, lived in an ashram, worked in corporate, but that's not my path. And
Yeah.
that's okay. But I could always beat myself up over, I had to get off Instagram
Yeah.
actually. I was like, got my freaking blue check mark, waited for so long for that. And then I just found it really overwhelming for that reason. I
Yeah.
was constantly feeling not up to snuff. So do things that ground you in you, and there are forever ways to compare ourselves to other people, but that's a never ending game. You can be 70 and still be
Yeah.
comparing yourself to like someone's on a yacht or someone's on this vacation. So it's a really dangerous and nasty place to be. And it's coming from a place of you not being satisfied with where you are.
Yeah.
So do the inner work to be like, what is it about so and so that triggers me? Maybe that's something that I want or need to focus on. Don't, if you compare yourself to, again, everybody's best self or the parts of their life that's working well, it's just you're never going to feel satisfied. So
Yeah.
and when you compare yourself, look at the other parts of that person's life.
Yeah.
Maybe they're, have this amazing job, but they're living with their parents, or
Yeah.
they just went through a bad breakup, or
It's the
they're
parts you don't see,
the parts you
or
don't
maybe they grew
see.
up without a parent, or
Right.
like things like that you kind of take for granted.
And how many people are looking at you going, I wish I freaking had that life. And
Yeah.
I feel like in North America, we really take that for granted. Like, one of the things I talk about in my perspective workshops is, we all live the food, shelter, water. I mean, we live, many people, and if you're working corporate, this will resonate with you, that many people live in the top 1% of the world that are here. And the stat from that is, if you have cash or assets worth 70,000 US, I'm talking about like executive cars.
Yeah.
Shit, you're in the top 1%
Of the world,
of
because
the
there are people that don't even have
freaking
running water.
world, right? So a great way to let go of the comparison piece is to just get grounded in all the things you're grateful for.
Yeah.
Because, at the end of the day, it could be so much worse, right?
Yeah.
So
100%. And this is one I always hear: the comparison is the thief of joy, but you don't often hear kind of the solution to that. Like, okay, so then how do I not compare? And this is something that I've found myself struggling with, honestly, a lot recently, as I've shifted from, in the corporate world to the social media world, and it just feels like the competition is like endless, and there's like
yes.
a number assigned to it. Like, there is, this person is more successful than you because there's
They
a
have a
number here
million
to prove it.
followers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is you. And then you start to look at like, okay, well, what do they have? Are they better looking than me? Like, are they, and that's like something I struggle with, is like the body image comparison, where I'm just like, the only thing different between you and I and what we're doing is, how good you look. And then that becomes so superficial and terrible and like out of control, but I
Yeah.
like beat myself up over it, and like it's created, then I start like working out like crazy. Like, that's something that I've kind of struggled with out of it. And it's like, so then how do you not do that? Like, do you just stay off? Do you like unfollow those
Yeah.
accounts? Like, how do you
Yeah.
kind of implement
Um,
it?
well, first of all, on behalf of your listeners, I don't think you have anything to
I,
worry about.
but that's like the
Like Disney
yeah.
Prince over here.
But,
Um,
but even it's like, I look at it and I'm like, these people are manufactured in like a factory. They're so beautiful, and they're
yes.
6'5". Like, my height is something that I make a joke of, but like, yeah, I'm not super tall. I'm not like extremely short. Like, it could be worse, but that is something that I've had to make a joke out of to almost like cope with it. But then, because like in dating, I've been told I'm too short, and in life, like I in sports and everything.
Yeah.
So that like became an insecurity in me, and now it's like, oh well, this person I see online is like 6'5", and they're good looking, and they have a
Sure.
million followers, and it's like,
Yeah.
it's so hard to not just be good. Meanwhile, like, I'm able to support myself financially, and I get trips to Hawaii, and like I try and remember those things, but still it's so toxic that even when you practice the gratitude, the comparison sneaks in.
Yeah, I think it's about having goals for self. Because if you have goals for self, you're competing against you.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the best place to be. Like, I have a financial target every year.
Yeah.
And so, as long as I hit that, I'm happy. It doesn't matter what everybody else is doing, right?
Yeah.
You can have a target for your body. There's certain things you got to just accept and own, like your height.
Yeah.
You know, for me, it was my hair. Like growing up in a very like
I like your,
white, thank you, but I was 38
yeah.
when I started wearing it curly in the pandemic. I stopped getting it straightened, and people were like, "You have curly hair," and just all of the year in my 20s, you know, it was a lot of white assimilation. My hair
Yeah.
was straight and it was blonde and I had green contacts. And, you know, it was going back to being like, stop comparing and wanting to be like everybody around you. And I mean, I went to school in like the 80s and 90s where like, you know, nerdy little brown girl, nobody was looking at me, right? So I struggled a lot with, you know, body image and all that, and I still do. But I think it's about just having your own personal goals and owning the things that, you know, you might not love about yourself, but owning it. And now like
Yeah.
I own my hair, and ever since I have, it's like it's the number one thing I get complimented on.
Yeah.
It's kind of wild, right?
Yeah.
So part of it is just like owning those parts of you, and then a part of it is just having goals that are about you and you. They're not,
Yeah.
oh, I want to look like so and so. I want my body to be like so and so. I want to.
Yeah. It's like
you
running the
know,
marathon. It's like you don't focus on the 30,000 other people running and trying to beat them. You just focus on either completing it if it's your first one,
Yeah.
or beating your last time.
Because you will go crazy. I mean,
Yeah.
there's 8 billion people you can
Yeah.
compare yourself to,
100%.
right? So it's just a slippery slope.
And this kind of connects to one of the topics you talk about, like in your book, like the chatty mind, right?
Yes.
Like this, tell us a little bit more about the chatty mind and what that is.
Good old chatty mind. So we think on average, studies suggest, again, it's very hard to say, but we think on average 60,000 thoughts a day. Okay. And that translates to 35 to 42 thoughts a minute.
That's insane.
It's insane. Our minds are constantly going. 80% of those thoughts are said to be negative or self-deprecating. So talk about imposter syndrome. It's natural. You're human. And apparently we're only aware of less than 1% of our thoughts.
Wow.
Because we're just autopiloting our way through life. So the mind, I mean, that's why the first chapter of the book is awareness. If we can be aware of what the fuck is going on in there, that is half the battle.
Yeah.
So we talk in the book, and this does come from ancient wisdom, of being a witness to your mind.
Yeah.
Bear with me here. It's a little outside of the box. Matt knows this well because
Yeah.
I've been hammering it home for the last 4 years. But
is this a snowflake
Chatty.
example?
Oh, Chatty. I was just going to do Chatty mind.
Okay, do the chatty mind. No, say it.
So think of your mind as having two parts, right? You have the chatty mind, which you're so often associated with. And, you know, all of us who struggle with anxiety or depression, it's almost like we think we are our thoughts. We're so much more than our thoughts, but I'll get back to that in a second. But chatty mind is the mind we're associated with that's thinking these 60,000 thoughts a day. What we want to do is lean into the other part of our minds, which I call the observing mind. Okay, the observing mind just observes what the chatty mind is doing, and it keeps on catching it. Because being mindful is all about being mentally present where you are physically. So
Yeah.
many times we're physically doing something, sitting in a meeting or cooking or even talking to someone, and we're mentally somewhere else.
Yeah.
Right? So observing mind observes what the chatty mind is doing and brings it back to the here and now. It doesn't judge what it's talking about. It doesn't solve for it just goes, hey, Matt, you're thinking about, you know, the gym. You're supposed to be here, right here.
Yeah, well, you're
Or-
washing the dishes. Wash the dish.
Right. And when you're thinking about work, you're at home thinking about work, you're at work thinking about home, it's classic.
Yeah.
So just coming, I think it was Eckhart Tolle that said the moment you realize you're not present, you're present. So it's just about realizing what the chatty mind is doing and bringing it back
Yeah.
to the here and now. And the more moments, like if you really focus on it, in 15 minutes, you might notice your mind running off like
Yeah.
30 times. That's okay.
Yeah.
It's a practice of constantly just
It's like
bringing
not punishing
back.
yourself. It's just becoming aware of it and kind of bringing yourself back.
Yeah, and in the book we have a saying, you can't let that shit go unless you bring that shit to surface.
Yeah.
And unless we are in tune with what is going on in here, we can't heal.
Yeah. And I think it's something too, like I've put this into practice, like you said, like I've heard you say this 100 times, but I always forget it. Like, and you just like get buried. And that's why I always come back to the book and I treat it like a kind of Bible that
It's so
I
such an honor that you're
come
saying
to.
that.
But like, even just having the conversation with you, like I've just felt recently, I've been really busy and under a lot of stress and traveling and this and that, and summer's coming up, and just kind of having this now is just almost recalibrating my brain
Good.
to kind of going away from the chatty back to the observing.
Yeah.
And it's a practice. Like, it's not like a, hey, I have this figured out now, great, I'm gonna go be happy the rest of my life. It's like a
It's a
constant.
continuous thing.
Yeah.
Even for me, I've been studying this stuff since, the 90s, and I'm still, in tune with when I react and when I go off and when I'm not in control of my mind. The biggest thing I learned at the ashram, just going back to that happiness point, is that our true nature is happiness.
Yeah.
And when people say to me, "Oh, I'm on a journey to find happiness," I always say,
It's right
"Don't
here.
go anywhere.
Yeah.
It's right here." The journey, and if you think about yourself as a toddler or an infant, or if you have toddlers and you're like, they're inherently happy,
Yeah.
right? Like, they cry for practical reasons if they're tired or they're hungry, but they're happy seeing a fire hydrant, a cloud, eating a cookie. They're inherently happy. So that was us at one point. So what happened when we were 5 or 6 or 7? Something a parent said, something a teacher said, something a sibling did, it started to impact our, oh, maybe we're not good enough. Oh, maybe we need more. So it is really going back to that source, and the work is in letting the shit go.
Yeah.
That's the work, is going back and moving through all that stuff and going back to source. That's why so much of happiness is found internally, not
Yeah.
in the external. True
Yeah,
happiness.
that makes a lot of sense. And I think it's something we often like lose hold of. And Chase, there's actually, I'll jump to it now. There was one submission that says it's about happiness. And it says, I'm living in a city where I'm not happy. Do you think moving to a new state will solve my issues? And I think this is a
I
funny
love
one
this.
because you and I have probably talked about this
Yeah.
1 million times. How many times have I said that I am going to move somewhere? And I still am. And I have a date set and I know where I'm going. I won't reveal it yet. But if you've been following along, you probably know where I'm headed. And it's a good question because I've resorted to that a lot where like, oh, well, I'm not happy here. It's a matter of going someplace new. And I think sometimes that can be true. Sometimes like you just need kind of a reset.
Yeah.
And it depends on what that signifies. If you're graduating college and you're moving to a city, yes, that's like a way to find new happiness. You have one chapter ending, one
Yeah.
starting. But if it's something where you don't like something about yourself or you find yourself unhappy and now you're just moving the location, odds are it's gonna follow you. And it's one of the reasons it's gonna follow you everywhere. It's one of the reasons why I moved out of my apartment in January. It is now June and I'm still here because there was a lot of shit that I had to deal with before I moved because I did not want to make the move this like that.
Right.
Like I had to deal with coming out to friends and family and I had to like manage what is this transition from full-time job to entrepreneurship. Like it was just too many variables changing at once and part of me felt like I was escaping a lot of that just by like, let's go to a new city.
Yes.
So
yeah, you said a key word is escapism. So I think that's the question you want to ask yourself is, are you hating the city? Because that's valid. If you move to a city and you're like, there's nothing here for me to do. There's no
friends, you're not
livelihood,
finding friends, no
yeah,
interest,
exactly.
the weather
No
sucks.
social life. Yeah. Then fine, like move locations, but see it that way. If you're trying to run away, I mean, there's that whole thing of like, you can run to the mountains and meditate, but your mind is going to follow you. I mean, when I was at the ashram, I was still stressed about all the things that, people at home or like personal relationships or those things still came up. It wasn't like I'm in a peaceful environment, which means I'm peaceful. The peace is inside, going back to that point. So I think, if it's a shitty place that you're living and you're not feeling it, it'll help. But if you've got stuff that you can go on $100,000 trip around the world and that stuff will follow you.
Yeah. So I think it's do the work kind of before you leave if you find that you're trying to avoid that work. But if there are times where
it feels good.
It feels good
refreshing.
And you'll know. I think that's the thing is you'll know, lean into your intuition. Like you've told me this a ton.
Yes.
And I think I mean, I remember vividly one time you and I were talking about like the move, and this was before this was maybe 6 months ago now. And you were like, okay, here's the news. You're moving to New York next week. How do you feel? And I was like, and I like froze. And I was like, I don't know if that's what I want. And so like that was
Right.
my gut kind of telling
Yes.
me, okay, you got to deal with some things first.
Yes. And I want to reiterate the intuition piece. The best compass we have in this entire world is built within us, and it's called our intuition. And we are so bombarded by external messages and what everybody's doing in comparison. We talked about that we've lost sight of that, and that's how we lose our way. And so going back to self, and you can always find that through meditation, through sitting on the ocean, shore of the ocean. Anytime you're reflective, anytime you're struggling with something, sure, ask 100 people their opinion, but only you know the answer. The only person that can give you true comfort is you. So we need to really start listening to ourselves with our relationships, with our jobs, with, our own self-care and personal path. Stop looking so much outside of yourself and go inwards and ask yourself the questions, and you will get answers. You will get
Yeah.
answers. It's that knowing. It's that knowing. And I'm working with a somatic healer right now on a bunch of things, but she keeps asking me to lean into the knowing of going to the ashram. She's like, that was so strong for you, and so many people were kind of against it, so to speak. What did that feel like? And so every time I kind of question things, I'm like, oh yeah, that knowing. What does it feel
Yeah.
like?
Yeah, and I feel like recently, like that's what I was following for a while, like the past month or so, and even like last episode or 2 episodes ago now, like just talking about my story and my whole journey and my like to coming out and everything behind it. Like I knew intuitively I had to do that, and
Yeah.
I remember I was sitting down with my mom, and my mom was like, "Well, why do you have to talk about it? Like, why do you have to be like so open about it in public?" And not she's coming from like a protective lens, but to me, like I remember looking at her, I was like, because I didn't have that, like I didn't have the representation, I didn't
Yeah.
have the purpose. Like I know in my core that this is what I need to do, and that this
Yeah.
is my purpose. For the first time in my life, I feel aligned with who I am, what I love to do, and like
Amazing.
how I can help others doing it. And just in having that conversation, like you just know. I think like now that it's happened, like I feel good about it, but now it's like the shoulds kind of come in your head, and
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of I have to bring myself back into that intuition in that moment and what I knew before I start to like now overthink it, and because now it's out there, and now you're getting every person thinking that they have an opinion on it and saying crazy things. You're like, how would someone even say this? But you're getting it all. And so then now you start to kind of like second guess it. But
Totally.
I mean, the messages of support and people reaching out, just being like, I didn't know anyone else was experiencing this, I'm struggling with it. Like, those are the things that I'm trying to kind of focus on, and remember that is the thing that led me into that mission and that
Yeah.
intuition before.
I think that's fantastic, and it's so important to keep leaning in. Um, I will say I feel like sometimes I'm generalizing, but our parents' generation didn't talk about anything. They didn't share anything. There was a lot of brushing under the rug, and everything's, we're going to pretend to look like this perfect family. We're in a generation where we talk about mental health and we talk about our worries. And I feel like you are inspiring so many people by sharing your story. And there is that when you are a public figure, you're up for judgment. It
Yeah,
just comes, it's par for the
it
course. But
does.
for every, person that says something shit, think about the person you've inspired, and it makes it all worth it.
Yeah, no, and I totally agree. And I think, like, from her perspective, like, we had a larger conversation about it. She was married and divorced by the time she was 22. Like, she came from a very traditional, like, Italian background. And I think to her, like, I mean, you're a child, your frontal lobe's not even developed at that
I
age,
know,
right? Like,
right?
so at her age, like, she kind of felt like, I think, an outcast, in that
Yes.
she kind of broke
Wow.
that mold of expectation. And now I'm doing that 10 times on like a public platform. And I think she's just worried about kind of the experiences and the pain that she felt on me. And what I think she needs to know is, like, one, she's projecting it, and two, I need to do
Yes.
those things. Like
Yeah.
like that's my battle to face, right?
Yeah. And three,
And
it's her job to protect you.
100%. So I think like that was kind of an interesting kind of dynamic. Was I think one could look at it as like she's not being supportive, but I was just really tried to be empathetic and just put myself in her shoes as to
Exactly.
why she was reacting, and it's always out of protection and it's always out of care.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I think it grew our relationship, and she was like, yeah, this is why I have this insecurity, is like I want you guys to be happy and not have bad reputations and have people talk about you. And I was like, oh, it's too late for that. But
I already went on The Bachelor.
yeah, I was like, that ship
Unfortunate.
has sailed.
Yeah,
But I
too
was
late.
like, you know what? Like, it's as long as I can learn from the experience and help people do it, like, I think that's a win. So yeah.
Absolutely. I love what you're doing now.
And the next submission actually kind of ties to that a little bit, but it's like, I thought I'd be married by 25 and I'm still single and struggling to find a life partner.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like 25, like I said, like your frontal lobe's not developed yet. Like you should not be
Like,
wanting
why
to
were
be,
people having kids at 19?
I don't
just
know.
don't
That
understand.
is a child. Those are actual child brides. I'm like, if I got married right now, I'd feel like a child groom, but I'm 29 and it's totally appropriate.
Child groom. Well, I mean, sadly enough, there is crazy stuff happening around the world. But I love that question because I feel like we follow this timeline in our head and put so much pressure on ourselves to do the thing. And when the thing, I mean like graduate school, then you go to university and then get your postgrad, then meet someone, then get married, then have 2.5 kids and a Kirkland and everything's going to be perfect, right? Hell to the fucking no. Like that's not how life works. There are people who are single who are happier than I've ever seen, and there are people with 2.5 kids and a dog and miserable, right?
Yeah.
So I think this pressure that, oh, I thought I was going to do this at this age, what that does is it creates a lot of that kind of energy. And then when you're out there dating, like
it comes through.
And buddy across the table's picking up on that. Like you want to get married and lock her down or him down or them down and have a kid. Like people, it's a different energy you're putting out. So for anyone who's struggling with like, oh, I thought I was going to be this at this, I'm a believer that everything happens exactly at the right time. And nobody's path goes the way they thought it would.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and it's not to say to not plan. Like you can have loose plans in your head. And I talk about, just to talk about anxiety and depression for a second, they say that a lot of depressive thoughts are of the past. The coulda, shoulda, woulda, I wish I didn't say this, I should have done it differently. And a lot of anxious thoughts are of the future. When is this going to happen? How is it going to happen? When am I going to get that job? When am I going to get that promotion? When am I going to meet that person? Right? So when we're always in the past or the future.
Never in the present.
Never in the present. Right? So we're not focusing on self, and that anxiety of like, when is it going to happen? That's driving us versus just being at peace with ourselves. So I would say just get in alignment with you and everything will start to unfold, and you might live the most incredible life that you couldn't have even imagined for yourself. But this whole, need to achieve this by this, I get it. I was there too. I get it. And life definitely didn't turn out how I thought it was in many different aspects of my life. But that path to true happiness, that's kind of at the forefront, and the practical stuff will come and go. But ask anybody who's like 60, did life go exactly as you wanted? Hell no. And this is what we have to get comfortable with, getting uncomfortable with the things not actually panning out exactly the way we hoped.
I mean, I think this one's an interesting one because I can relate to this in the sense of I went to 11 weddings last year and I saw some of my best friends all getting married and they were all happy. And, as fun as it was to celebrate them, I couldn't stop and think like, okay, I'm here alone. I don't even have a plus one. I've been giving plus ones. I've talked about this on the show before. But like, I was just like, I'm so behind. And I like had been in relationships that I thought like, this is my person. And then they all like failed, like some like nationally televised, and
Right.
it's like I really wanted to get engaged to the point where I flew across the entire world to go potentially do that. It didn't work out, and so then that led me to the okay, what do I need to address that I'm suppressing, and that was the sexuality piece, and then I did that, and then I started to date, and I
Mm.
came in strong, and I was like, this is the reason why I haven't met my person. Like I'm gonna meet my person now, and then it was just like it wasn't working. Like I again, that like energy you project, I think comes through. And then the second I like just sat alone, I spent like a few months, like I started to build this podcast, and was really just focused on other things, not in like a coping mechanism way, but I just
Mhm.
like deprioritized that need of like I need to find my person.
Right.
And then like I've decided, okay, I'm gonna move in the fall. Like I want to stay single. Like I feel like I'm in this new. I feel like I'm 16 again, dating for the first time in a lot of ways, and this is all new and exciting. And then I start to like meet like someone, right? And
Right.
that's it happens when you kind of don't expect it, but it's like it's that energy that you're putting out. It's not like I think a lot of times people say, "Oh, I'm here. I'm not expecting it. Like I want it to
Yeah.
happen," but it's like it's not that you're
It's
not
there.
expecting it. It's just that you're focused on other things. Like you're not projecting this energy of desperation, and I
Yes.
think that is what attracts people in. So I
Right.
don't think it's like it's not when you're unexpected. It's when you're not really gunning for it. Like you're just letting
Yeah.
things be. You're being present in other
Yeah,
things.
I think it's so important to ride the waves. I always kind of picture myself just because we have a very false sense over what we have control over. We have very little control over things that happen in life, like outside of, like we can control what we want to eat. We can't control when we lose people. We can't control when people
Yeah.
fall sick. We can't control if someone's going to fall in love with us or not. So I had a monk say to me once, you are always 100%. No one can add to that. No one can take away from that. You are always 100. Not to say you can't have a beautiful relationship, but relationships are like Venn diagrams.
Yeah.
We need to have our own life, and then there's that overlap, but we need to love ourselves first. And this whole notion of like putting timing on everything. I mean, this is what I love about Gen Z. I'm generalizing, but like they don't give
Yeah.
and they don't have that timeline. They're like, I don't want to be in a relationship. I
Yeah.
don't want kids. I don't want a corporate job. I want to travel the world. And so I think it was something, from maybe, I don't know, 10, 20 years ago that it's patriarchy really, that
Yeah.
like we get married and we settle down, we have to find a person. And who says that that's going to make us more happy? I would say, I will say from a practical sense, if you do want, biological children, there is a clock and there is something to
Yeah.
think about.
But now, like, freezing your eggs is very
Freezing your
common. Like, I have
eggs
a
and
lot of girlfriends
IVF
that are
and
doing that now where they're freezing their eggs at 30.
adoption.
Yeah, adoption. I
There's so
mean,
many
there really
options.
are many
Um,
different paths.
but this pressure to like hit this at this time, it's almost like you're not in flow with your own life and you're not
Yeah.
trusting that your own life is
Yeah.
exactly. And I know people always say this so cliche, but it's almost like when you find self and when you're not looking for it, that's when it pops
Yeah.
up. It's like the
Yeah.
book,
It's so
right?
true.
Just never expected it and fell in my lap.
Yeah. No, it really is. So I'd say, again, it's not like don't expect it, but just focus on the things that make you whole, and that attracts people in.
Exactly.
All right, Kirkland here. I'm taking the reins. These two are putting me to sleep with all this yapping. Listen, if I'm not going to be the main host of this podcast, then I at least get to call some shots. And right now, I'm putting my foot down. We're making this a 2-part episode. Come back next week if you want to hear the rest. Enjoy your Sunday and go touch some grass. You all need it. We'll see you next week.